It's all for you. Yeah, yo. There whenever it matters, and even more when you feel like it doesn't. Protect you so you never feel like you wasn't. Know I'm right alongside you. Either that or I'm behind you, but always got you. End of discussion, nothing means more. First one to offer is shoulders for what you reach for. Thought I saw the eyes of the world until I seen yours. And know that I ain't see a better view yet. I'm with whatever, so don't ever you fret. Know that you covered, not a hurdle or a heartbreak. A change what a partake, cause none of them won't ever get comfortable in your walkway. My job is to aware you, fully loaded, prepare you for all of the above that I'm never letting get near you. But still in all, give you every advantage I found. Couldn't find a better fit for them, along with my crown. And since the baton was passed, I've been down. Cause failing's not an option, and dad is not a noun, not at all.
This works. That's kind of what this has become for me. Poetry, writing, it was cathartic, it was therapeutic, and I needed it. It was the release that I needed when my depression was at its peak. It was the release I needed as a boy that I wasn't really afforded. Because you're a boy, you don't talk about depression. You don't believe in depression. You're black, you don't believe in depression. I was both. It was difficult. But I realized later on, it's all a lie. It's all a lie. It's a byproduct of toxic masculinity. May you ever heard of that? Toxic masculinity is the ideal that men are limited in what defines what it means to be a man. And more often than not, it is pigeonholed into men being aggressive, men being stuck.
And welcome to Dad is Not a Noun. My name is Ishmael. I hope everyone's doing well. And I'm truly excited to have this special guest with me because as Black men, when it comes to trauma and mental health, we are pigeonholed. And I have the perfect guest with me to talk about that a little bit. I have Douglas Powell, aka Roscoe Burnems, with me. How you doing, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on, man. Real fast, tell a little people about yourself.
So, so born Douglas Powell, artistically Roscoe Burnems, and so we definitely answer to both. I am Richmond, Virginia's first poet laureate. I'm a Watering Hole Fellow. I've done a TED Talk. I'm a National Poetry Slam champion. And I guess bigger than that, I am a husband and a proud father of two children, a 14-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son.
That's awesome, man. And thank you for coming on with me. I appreciate your time because I know you're a busy man. You got a lot of stuff going on. I follow you on IG. You're a busy man, so I appreciate your time. I truly, truly do. But real fast, we're living in this global bastard. So how you and your family been going through this pandemic?
We've been faring pretty well. We've been very fortunate to be able to transition as well as we have. Of course, the pandemic hit all the artists very hard. I'm a full-time teaching artist, so schools aren't really doing workshops. Nobody's in classes anymore. And before everything started happening virtually, nothing was happening. So I am just kind of at home, kind of twiddling my thumbs, trying to figure out like, okay, I guess my career is over now. But we learn to adapt, we learn to adjust. I started doing more stuff virtually. It actually gave me a lot of time to be at home with my kids, more, and be able to help, facilitate that educational process. And so now my son's doing taxes. My son's doing taxes, and solving cancer and all that kind of stuff now. So it's been it's been great for him academically, which I'm really really excited about. And my wife was able to transition. She's a white collar worker. She's an accountant, so she was able to work from home, and we've been able to kind of push through okay. I think everybody's got a little cabin fever, just tired of being cooped up in the house. But outside of that, I think we're managing pretty well.
And that's awesome, man. But quick question: what has the pandemic taught you as a father, as a husband, and as a man?
That I need time away from my children. That's what it's.
I'm gonna edit that out.
No, look, I. That's an honest answer. All right, that's an honest answer. Listen, no, but like, we love our time together. It's shown me like, how well I know my children and how well I didn't know my children. We're all really busy. You know what I mean? My daughter is 14. She's got friends. She's got interests. She's got her own life that she's starting to blossom into. My son is growing by the second. So there's a lot of things that you miss when you're working nonstop and you're just trying to balance everything. So with the pandemic, where the blessing was is that it slowed everybody down for a little while, and we were all just able to spend more time together and really get to know each other. And so and we really really enjoy that. And also, yeah, like there are times we know that we need some space, right? Everybody needs their own individual time, their me time, and that's okay too. I think that that's a healthy balance in the household, in the family dynamic, knowing that you want to have time with each other, but you also need time apart. It's important for any relationship. And also that, what's the old adage? Absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? So being able to have some time away from each other, even though we're all in the house together, having some time away from each other, we're able to come back and be like, well, how was your day? Or what are you into now? And so I get to pick my kid's brain in a different way than I have before. And I love it.
And then talk about, because I know in the previous interview you talked about the vision board. Talk about that, the vision board, that, and have you utilized that with your kids too?
So I talk about it with my daughter. I love vision boards so much. So I do. I know it sounds like kind of corny, but like I
No,
love it. And
no.
everything that I've been able to kind of check off my list and things I wanted to accomplish, getting my first special on TV, becoming a teaching artist, becoming poet laureate, all these things I had them on my vision board first years, you know what I mean? And just trying to, I don't know how this is going to happen, but I know it's going to happen. I'm just going to keep working hard, and I'm going to figure this out. And it just helped me kind of keep everything in perspective and keep everything in focus. So I talk about that with my daughter more. She's the teenager, so I talk about that with my daughter more often than probably my son. My son's 4, and I think she's starting to get it. She doesn't do vision boards just yet, but she's a visual learner though, and she draws and she does digital media, and she's able to kind of visualize her own stuff in that way. She's also becoming like a writer now, and so she's building these like short stories and these fictional tales, but she kind of inserts her own reality, her own life into those fictional tales. And so I think it's helping her visualize where she would want to be, or what I mean, if she could kind of create her own reality, this is what it would look like. And I think it's the same process. Manifestation looks very different for each person. And so as long as she understands that if she keeps that focus, or if she's able to dream and visualize whatever it is she wants to be, it's gonna start to happen. The universe is gonna start to kind of build that um, around what you are and what you want and what you want to be.
And then also, can you connect the visual board to discipline? Because I think they go hand in hand. Because you can visualize something, but at the same time, you put in that work. You got to put in that work to make it happen.
I think for me that kind of came naturally, honestly. So and have certain things in mind, I'm like, okay, I gotta buckle down. this is what it is. And I mean, if that meant I needed to cut out certain things or cut out certain people, or, you know, just change my surroundings, change my environment, I knew it was for the greater good. And I think that's what vision boards sometimes help with, right? You start to see the bigger picture. And once you see the bigger picture, you're like, okay, all these little small things that are in my way, all these little obstacles, I don't have time to focus on those things now. You know what I mean? I feel like if somebody's dead me back or they're not happy for my success, I don't have no time to focus on that now because I'm focused on the bigger picture. I'm focused on where I want to be. And so I think that's what help. I think it happens naturally, and it may not happen for everyone like that. But I do think that once you start manifesting and you find a path of manifesting that works for you, it helps kind of you get tunnel vision a little bit. You're like, nah, I'm gonna get this and I'm gonna focus on this. And once you develop that focus, everything else around you is like, nah, that's not even in my, that's not even in my vision right now. I can't even focus on that. And you start to develop that discipline over time.
And then how did that help you to create that amazing show that you did on that's on Amazon now, and then also I think the platform is Toby platform, your show comedy. So how did that kind of correlate? How did that work? How did it work
Yeah.
itself fruition?
So, first of all, shouts out to my big sister Nikki, who was really the one who pushed me to do it because I did not think that Traumedy would work. I knew I loved stand up, and I knew I really loved poetry. I've been doing poetry and spoken word for years. I did not think trying to figure out a way to blend these worlds together was going to be something that people would understand or accept. And so she was like, "Nah, you just got to do it. You just got to do it and just see what happens." So that was really where we started, and we worked on my vision board. And I got to be honest, I didn't really have a very focused intent. I didn't know what to do with it. You know what I mean? And so I was like, well, I know I don't want it to just be a show, but I don't really know what I want it to be. And then so, it's funny how that's where it starts, and then it snowballed from there. I was like, I want people to see this later, right? I want people to be able to access this later. I don't want this just to be this one show. I want people to have this for years to come. All right, let's film it. All right, cool. We're gonna film it. I don't know where we're gonna put it once we film it, but we're gonna film it. So so then I reached out to some people and I called in some favors. And at first it didn't go well. And then I had a homegirl come out of the woodwork and was like, yeah, sure, I'll help you. You know what I mean? And that's how the universe works, right? Like you got to work, you got to put the work in and you got to put the effort in. And then everything around you starts to kind of fall into place. And so I had a homegirl who was like, yo, I got a camera crew. I'll come through. If you can just slide us a little bit so it's not, so it's worth their time. Cool. So I scrounged up, my wife and I, we scrounged up some money. We make it happen. I still don't know where it's going. It was her. It was my homegirl Nakia. Shouts out to Kia and Quality Legacy, their production company. It was that crew where she was like, oh yeah, well I had reached out to Amazon. They have this like independent platform, and I put a documentary up there. You could probably just put that on there and see how that goes. And I'm like, really? That's how it's? You can just do that? And boom, you know what I mean? Like we make it happen, and I get somebody to handle the editing, and everything just started to fall into place. And then boom, we're on Amazon, right? And then let me tell you how. Like, so look, when you have a vision, there's gonna be things that's gonna like block that, right? There's gonna be things that's gonna get in the way. That you're gonna reach an impasse, and you got to figure out how to get around that wall, how to get past it. We get on Amazon, numbers are good. Then they snatch it off Amazon. They do this like quarterly review, and if they don't feel like it's meeting their standards, then they pull it. Okay. So then we get pulled from Amazon, off of Amazon's platform. And I'm like, well, there it is. That was it. You know what I mean? We're done. But I'm like, I this has got to go somewhere. Like this has got to go somewhere else. So I was like, so now we back on the hunt to try to figure out where it's going to go. I come across a distributor that plugs you into all these different streaming platforms. And shouts out to filmhub.com. Filmhub is a distributor that plugs you into all these streaming platforms. And then by chance, one of the first places they reach out to is Amazon.
Wow.
they were able to get it back on Amazon Prime. Not only that, if your numbers do okay, then they'll push your title to other platforms. So now we on
Wow.
Tubi, now we on Plex, now we on this, now we on Vimeo, now we don't, you know what I mean? Like now we ain't just limited to one spot. So you think sometimes when you get knocked down or when that seems like that path gets cut off, and you're like, oh man, but that's the path I was gonna choose. That's where I was gonna go. How you gonna block my path? But that detour put me in so many other spaces where other people can access me. And so you gotta just know that the universe is working with you. You know what I mean? And the universe ain't working against you. You know what I mean? If long as you want to see yourself succeed, success is coming. But you got to keep that vision, and and it starts with that vision board. I put everything. I put Amazon up on that vision board. I put all that, like everything. I put it all in that vision board because I want to stay focused.
And then the important thing that you brought up is learning to adapt. And I think that's an important thing that I think that hinders a lot of people, learning to how to adapt to your situation. Sometimes what you plan may not work, but if you're willing to pivot, it may work out in your advantage at the end of the day. So kind of talk about that too, that importance of pivoting, you know what I mean? Because that's vital to have longevity in what you're doing.
The success of, and I know I'm starting really broad. I'm gonna narrow it in a second. The success of any species is contingent on their ability to adapt and evolve. Right? You have to, and so it doesn't just because we're in modern society. That fundamental process of survival hasn't changed. If something doesn't work, you got to adapt and evolve. You got to change. You got to move. You can't stay stuck. If you stay stuck, you'll go extinct. You'll die
Yeah.
off. Right? You have to keep moving. And so it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be rough. It's gonna seem like it's not working at first. You're gonna feel like a failure. You're gonna feel all these things, but you have to keep growing. You have to keep evolving. You have to keep looking for another path in order to get where you want to be. If you stay stuck, you're going nowhere.
That's fact. And then let's talk about, because I enjoyed your TED talk. Let's talk about toxic masculinity, because that kind of leads into that adapting too. Because again, you have to pivot. You're not your environment. Because that's the one thing I
Right.
learned from your TED talk, is that you're not your environment. That's not who you are. So kind of talk about that too, as how did toxic masculinity um you know, hinder you or helped you as a child growing up, as now as a father?
So I was able to take a lot of the toxicity that I grew up in, a lot of the negligence that I grew up with from the men in my life. I was able to take that and say, look, I don't like the way this feels. I don't like the way this looks. When I become a parent, if I become a parent, I'm going to do things differently. So I grew up in a fairly traditional house, minus having my dad around. Grew up in a house full of women who were all like Southern Baptist women, you know what I mean? That kind of, Southern traditional house. So, look, if you're a man, you gotta, your job is to work and to make money and build a house. I don't know. Like that's that's what you're supposed to do, right? You take care of your kids and you work and that's it. And so I wanted more than that. And then also if you're a man, you got to be hard all the time. You can't be soft, right? That's not what men do. Men are protectors and providers, and because they're protectors and providers, they got to be stoic. They got to be hard, emotionless, just these stoic creatures. And that didn't feel natural for me either. I was very emotional all the time. You know what I mean? I was a crybaby as a child. I wrote poetry. Like this stoic and emotionless didn't fit in my arsenal at all. So none of that felt natural for me. And I was like, but this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem like it fits for everybody. And that's the kind of guy you want to be. Okay, sure. But that's not humans. Humans in general aren't monolithic. So you can't just attach these stereotypes and attach these ways to how all people should behave. We know that humans are so individualized, and that's what makes us great, right? The fact that we all have these kind of quirks and these different kind of unique things about us. So fast forward to becoming a father, I'm like, I want my son to understand that he has a range of emotions he can access, right? If things hurt, I'm still human, right? If things hurt me, I'm gonna cry, you know what I mean? Or I'm gonna feel sad, or I'm gonna feel upset, and I may want to express that in some way. Like, taking away from men is destructive. And when you start to create these stoic boys, what you end up getting is emotionless men, you know what I mean, who don't know how to access that. But now you want these men to be in whole relationships. Well, relationships require some level of emotion, right? They require you to access your feelings and express those feelings in some way, shape, or form. And so if we don't have access to that as a youth, then it's very difficult to have access to that as an adult and to find that emotional capability. So I took all those restrictive things as a boy and turn that into nurturing as a man, now raising two children, you know what I mean, and raising my daughter and my son in a fairly similar way. My daughter gets access to be able to say, I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm hurt, I want to cry, this, I'm heartbroken, I'm whatever. My daughter gets access to all that. She's able to be in tune with all those emotions. I don't want to take my son away from that. My son's a human. He's a human being with feelings and emotions. So he also has that same level of access to be able to say, I'm upset, I'm sad, I want to cry, I'm heartbroken, I'm whatever. Like, and be able to know that that is okay, because that is a part of the human experience. I think that is really debilitating as a species, as a culture, to say that this one type of human can be emotional, can say what they feel, can be in tune with that, and then this human over here, because they look a little different, shouldn't be able to do those things. It's unfair, and I wasn't going to raise my kids in that type of unfair society.
And I agree with that because if you think about it, to put it in a simple form, it's like the Terminator. You know, the Terminator character became lovable when you start seeing his emotional side, his human side. if
Right.
you if you think about it, but no, but it is very true. But also talk about what I appreciate you too about is that you don't badmouth your dad, even though your dad wasn't around. But I don't hear anything negative about your dad because I kind of come from the same story from you. Like my father wasn't around. Luckily, I had my stepdad there, but luckily, my mom would never say anything negative about him, you know. And so, but the one thing that was frustrated with me a little bit was I don't know if you get it. As like growing up, a lot of people said I would look like my dad, and I'm like, okay, like the only time my father came around is like when I look in the mirror. I'm like, oh, like like okay. So have you had a scenario like that before, where like people say you constantly look like your dad, but also talk about like how your mom played a critical role too? Because like my mom played a critical role in my life, and not bad mouth my biological dad.
So my dad has definitely caught hell from me. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. He is definitely listen. he is definitely caught. He's definitely caught some hell from me. Not, what's so wild though is it wasn't for the absence. He dipped when I was about 2 or 3 years old.
Right.
And it wasn't for the absence. I could get over that.
Right.
I could get over that. Where my father caught a lot of flack from me was when we finally met. When we finally met, he took no accountability for his absence. You know what I mean? It was all, oh, well, your mother was difficult.
Right.
Oh, I didn't think she wanted me around. I'm sure she didn't want you around. I don't know what that has to do with me. All right, what that got to do with me? So and then we tried to have conversations now as an adult, and it was weird because what he wanted was to now kind of pick up where he left off and wanted to kind of play daddy. But I'm like, bruh, you missed 20 plus years. It's really hard for you just to jump in and be, and try to like kind of, pull your pants up and flex a little bit, because that's not the relationship we have, or not the relationship we have yet. We're going to have to take time. And he didn't want to hear none of that. So that's where my dad gets a lot of guff. from me.
Mm.
But to my mom's credit, though, she didn't. She had every opportunity to badmouth my father. There was a long list of things she could have said that I learned about later, but she didn't. She never talked bad about him. She, you know what I mean? She never talked bad about him, and I guess to some extent I appreciate that, because what happened was I was able to meet him without any preconceived notions, without any coming in with any bad blood, for real, and we were able to establish a relationship or not establish a relationship based on our own merit, without her being in my ear and being like, well, he was this and he was this and he was this and he did this. She was never that type of person. You know what I mean? So shouts out to Rosa May, because she was a real one, and she did the best that she could. My mom was super instrumental in my life. I tell people all the time, I learned how to be a good father by watching men around. You know what I mean? Like, I had one uncle, he wasn't really around. I had some older cousins, they weren't really close. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have any. My brother was locked up by the time I turned 14, and so I didn't have any male role models around, for real, for real. You know what I mean? So I'm watching the Huxtables and Fresh Prince of Bel Air, trying to, you know what I mean, taking notes. You know what I mean? I'm like, what is Carl Winslow over there doing? Like, that looks like the right thing to do. I'm doing that. So, outside of that, my mom was the biggest influence. I'm like, when I become a dad, I want to be a dad like my mom was, because I didn't have nothing else. You know what I mean? I grew up in a house full of women. My mom, my grandmother, my granny, all living in the same house with me. I grew up with nothing but matriarchs. So, I'm very grateful for my mother and the women in my life in general, because they helped mold me into the man they wanted to see, right? Because their fathers or their husbands had dipped, so they were like, "You're gonna be better than that. You're gonna be the one who breaks the cycle." Okay, so I'm super grateful for my mother and and all that we went through together.
And like I said, that's the amazing thing too, is like you could see that in your body of work, is that you're working hard to change the narrative, even though you dealt with a lot of trauma, but you work so hard to change that narrative and perception of black fathers, because for decades black fathers been getting that the horrible stereotype of being dead bad dads, deadbeat dads, which
Right.
there's some element of truth. But if you think of the large percentage, it's kind of a myth. So I appreciate you doing
So
that.
it is. It really is a myth, and so this is what I want people to either Google, because you don't have to take my word for it. But so I realized that I grew up fatherless, but I got older and realized that I was in the minority. So, and then and from as far as anecdotal evidence is concerned, like, my friends who are also black boys, you know what I mean, they actually grew up with their fathers in the house. You know what I mean? Or like later, like, their parents may have gotten divorced, but they were still seeing their dads on the weekends or whatever. The majority of the dudes that I grew up with had their father in their life. Fun fact: the white friends that I had actually grew up fatherless like me. So it's definitely, again, it's not monolithic, right? You know what I mean? Everybody's experience is different. Then come 20, I want to say 2017, 2018, right? I stumble across an article that quotes that shows some statistics from National Health Statistics and the CDC. There was a study done about active fathers in the house, right? Or active fathers in general, whether they were in the house or not. And it showed that by race, black men were more active than any other race, including white men. Black men were at the
Facts.
top of the list as far as being active fathers. And that's a real statistic. People can go Google it. They can look up the articles from the CDC and the National Health Statistics. Black men are in their children's lives and are more active fathers than any other race in America. So it has been a myth, and it's been a myth for a very long time. And even though that's not my story, my kids are growing up with being in that statistic, right? They're growing up with me in the house, being an active father, being around, showing them love, showing them affection, showing them how to, how to be healthy, responsible adults. Like, I'm changing, the narrative that we've been fed, because black men been out here doing it. Just because my dad dropped the ball doesn't mean that he represents all of black fathers. Black men been out here handling their business and being in their kids' lives. I'm trying to continue that, and I'm trying to change this stereotype, this stigma that we've been fed, because we've been fed that by mainstream media, and by mainstream I mean white. So we've been fed that. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. You know what I mean? I'm gonna keep it a
No,
buck.
I love it, man.
We've been fed that, but that has not been the standard. That has not been the truth. And we've allowed ourselves to believe it. We've allowed ourselves to believe it. But I'm over that. And so I want to be really vocal about, look, black men are out here winning. We out here doing all the daddy things, right? And loving it, doing it all and enjoying it. Because that's the other stereotype, is that, oh man, you see a man with his kids, you know what I mean, like Judge such and such, you know what I mean, probably ordered this weekend for him. And so he's just trying to make it through. He's, you know what I mean? Everybody thinks that. Everybody thinks that dads just want to show up in matching outfits and take selfies, but it's not. That's not the case, man. We out here. I love being a dad. It's my favorite job. It's my favorite job.
And I feel an energy, and that's why I created this platform. I'm not a father, but I'm a big fan of fathers like yourself and other fathers that I've had on the show, because I want you to tell your story on this platform. And then also it's dedicated to my father, who I call him my father. You know,
Yeah.
he's not my biological, but he's my father who passed away earlier this year. And so this platform is dedicated to all the fathers like him. And so I love to hear those stories, and that's important. Before we end the show, talk about the event you have coming on for Father's Day.
Awesome. So yeah, my first comedy and poetry special was called Traumedy, and this actually kind of picks up where it left off, but I'm really focusing on the Black experience and how that affects fatherhood. So the show is called My Life as a Black Dad. It's a poetry and comedy special. It is happening live in Richmond, Virginia on Father's Day, June 20th. It's going to be a really great show. It's gonna be funny. It's gonna be insightful. I'm gonna have some great pieces around centered around fatherhood and what it means to be black, or both. And then we're gonna talk about, what it means to be a parent, and how that experience changes you when you're growing up in America, or when you're raising children in America, who can become a target very fast. So, and how to navigate that and what that looks like, and the fear that comes with that as a parent, when you have to try to, navigate two children through that world. So, but it's going to be really funny, and it's going to be really insightful. You're going to feel all the feels when you come and see it. So if people are, if they're in the Richmond, Virginia area, or if they're nearby, come check out the show. And then, soon enough, it will be streaming somewhere.
Now, I'm hoping we're streaming somewhere, because I know there's a lot of people across the country that won't be able to make it to Richmond,
Right.
but would like to get that experience and tell that story, man. But King, thank you for jumping on with me. I really appreciate it, man. I know you're a busy man. Where can people find you?
So they can go to my website, which is roscoeb.webs.com, or they can find me on social media, at Roscoe Burnems, RoscoeBurnems, on all social media. Super easy to find. There's not that many Roscoe Burnhams is floating around. So, if you Google me, I'll pop up, and yeah.
Awesome, man. Thank you for your time, and we out. Peace.